outside near the Hacienda de San Angel as you head toward the Norway. Jesus Christ.
Dying.
Norway. You are not the first to pass.
I was literally pinching my finger like, don't say it, let him continue.
Those who speak the spirit of Norway seek peril and adventure, but more often find beauty and charm. Look to the spirit of the seafarer. Here we go. Okay.
But on the whole, I've been a saint to those poor unfortunate souls.
Hello, and welcome to Poor Unfortunate Podcast. I'm Connor Perkins.
And I'm Caroline Ameti.
This is the Disney podcast for grown-ups where we shoot the shit about Disney the way that you do with your friends. Welcome back to all of our returning listeners. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to all of our new listeners. It's great that you hit play. Please also remember to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way all of our episodes download to your device and you don't miss out on anything. And then everybody, once we get to the end of this episode, make sure that you hit 5 stars and leave a written review wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way we're seen in search results. Other people can find the podcast. It's the single best thing you can do alongside sharing the podcast, which I will also ask you to do. That helps us grow our audience. And if we're not growing, what are we doing, baby?
I don't have an answer to that.
I don't know either. I don't even know where that came from. The spirit moved me. Okay.
The channel is open.
The channel's open. So this episode, this is our Rant and Rave episode. We're back to the beginning of a new cycle. And Caroline, why don't you tell us what we're going to be doing today?
So today we are going to be talking about 2 of the pavilions in the World Showcase in Epcot in Walt Disney World. And this was actually born out of an episode of Caroline What's New that we were prepping and some news about the pavilion that I am going to rant about today. I was kind of writing out this little news segment and I realized I had like 4 paragraphs and I thought to myself, this is a rant rave. This is not a news episode. And Connor is going to have the rave today because, I mean, there are some really great pavilions to rave about, and he has picked a particularly wonderful one. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the contrast between the way these 2 pavilions have kind of evolved over time since they became a part of the World Showcase.
Yeah. And so we have done a whole lot of park stuff, but just bear with us because we're going to do this and then we're going to focus on some other stuff for a while, but we needed to do this one.
Yeah,
It's been simmering for a bit.
It has. It has.
Yeah. All right, Caroline, take us away.
Okay, here we go. I am going to be ranting today about the Morocco Pavilion, but not about the Morocco Pavilion itself, but about the way that Disney is failing it. So first of all, I just want to cite my sources right off the bat. I actually had to really reference a lot of them to really get into the history of this pavilion. And I think there's something to be gleaned from that, but that's a story for later in this rant. So I just want to say thank you to All Ears Net, Inside the Magic, Walt Disney World News Today, Royal Central Co., Walt Disney World Magazine, and especially Savoring the Magic on YouTube. So here's how I want to start this off. Once one of the most authentic and intentionally crafted pavilions in Epcot's World Showcase, the Morocco Pavilion has been subjected to not only neglect and laziness, but active undermining by Disney, confirming the fear that many fans have that Disney has abandoned the care and cultural respect it used to show for the World Showcase. So as always, let's start with some background information about the pavilion. And there's a lot. And there's a lot that I just didn't know, so this has just been fun. So the World Showcase in Epcot itself opened on October 1st, 1982, without the Morocco Pavilion as one of its original countries. The Morocco Pavilion opened on September 7th, 1984, serving as the World Showcase's first expansion, followed by Norway in 1988. It is located between the France and Japan pavilions. Morocco is the first and only World Showcase country to have its country of origin as its sponsor upon its opening, with other countries sponsored by the likes of the Alfredo Restaurant Group for Italy. Oh my God, throwback. Do you remember Alfredo's in Italy? Loved that place. Or Bass Brewery for the UK pavilion. So the king of Morocco at the time, King Hassan II, was very keen to have Morocco showcased to Americans and Epcot visitors and was very closely involved in its construction. He sent artisans and designers from Morocco to work on the construction of the pavilion, including the intricate tile, mosaic, and plaster work. The king was even sent a scale model of the pavilion upon its completion so that he could inspect it for its authenticity. The Moroccan National Tourist Office had a visitor center in the pavilion during its early years, all part of the effort to increase interest in and visibility of the country of Morocco for tourism. The authenticity of the design of the pavilion was especially important as it needed to follow the Islamic principle of having no representations of people in the art, plaster, and tile work. Princess Lala Mariam was present for the opening and dedication of the $20 million pavilion. And while that sounds like a pretty large price tag, we're going to hear about all of this. When I think of the intricacy and the deceptive scale of this pavilion, that's honestly a pretty good number. So, speaking of its intricacies, let's talk about the architecture and the features of the pavilion.
Because it's stunning.
It's stunning. I mean, this is going to be an episode where you'll especially have to head over to our Instagram because you really need some visual references for a lot of this, and they will be there. 4 Moroccan cities are represented in the architecture of the pavilion: Casablanca, Fez, Rabat, and Marrakesh. The pavilion mirrors the layout of many Moroccan cities, with the new city, the Ville Nouvelle, in the front of the pavilion, and the old city, or the Medina, in the back. And the layout of this pavilion feels most closely related to the structure of the city of Fez. Major features of the pavilion include minarets, that's probably the first thing your eye is going to be drawn to, or prayer towers, the main focal points that rise above the pavilion. The focal point minaret in the pavilion, next to the Tangerine Cafe, is a replica of the Koutoubia Mosque minaret from Marrakesh, and the minaret across the pavilion is modeled after the Cella minaret from Rabat. Also, in advance, I have looked up all of the pronunciations I could find. If I make a mistake, I sincerely apologize. I have tried to do my research. But I mean, I think that's honestly a great point about this. Like, there's so much that a lot of us just aren't familiar with when it comes to Morocco, and that's why this pavilion is so important. But we'll get to that later. A gate in the center of the pavilion entrance separating the old city from the new city is basically a replica of the Babu Jaloud in the city of Fez. It's covered in intricate blue tiling and sports 3 archways that guests pass through to enter into the Medina. Then we have Fez House. In my opinion, this is one of the most special and beautiful places in all of the World Showcase. So it's right next to the gallery, which we will talk about in a moment. But this 2-story traditional Moroccan home has a center courtyard that is covered in intricate mosaic tile with colored glass lanterns hanging and carved wood railings decorating the upper level. This is one of the most peaceful, restful spots that you will find in Disney. There are benches, there's a small fountain along the wall, and apparently it's never been quite quiet enough in there for me to hear this, but apparently if you listen carefully, you can hear the sounds of the family who live in the house coming from the upper level as they're like preparing a tea service for guests. A plaque reads a Moroccan proverb that ends with, quote, "A home is one's castle this side of heaven." And honestly, that's what Fez House feels like. It's beautiful. There is also a replica of the Nezrine Fountain from the city of Fez. This is located very far back in the pavilion, next to Restaurant Marrakesh, which we are going to talk about in a moment. A plaque next to the fountain. So again, another plaque. There are many all around the pavilion. It really makes this such a cultural learning opportunity. I want to say more so than any other pavilion. There's just a lot that you can really learn with a simple walk around. And the plaque next to the Nezrine Fountain describes the abstract geometric design style that can be seen throughout the pavilion. There are so many hidden gems and corners to be found in this pavilion. I was honestly shocked at the number of walkthroughs I needed to watch and photos that I needed to look at of this pavilion to write this. I have visited it dozens of times, honestly, in the past few years alone, and I still have not been able to take in every detail. What's also really astounding is taking a look at the side-by-side photos of the structures from the pavilion and their real Moroccan counterparts. The detail match is absolutely stunning. I'll share side-by-side photos of the gate, specifically on our Instagram. The craftsmanship and the detail and the match is just insane. It's beautiful. So let's talk about the dining available in this pavilion. On its opening day, the Morocco Pavilion was home to 2 dining locations, table service Restaurant Marrakesh and quick service Tangerine Cafe. Restaurant Marrakesh, currently not in operation, we will of course get there, featured a menu of traditional Moroccan dishes like lamb, tagine, shish kebab, salads, pastries, and more. It offered both lunch and dinner in an interior featuring chandeliers, rich carpeting, and hand-laid tile, and featured live performers including folk musicians and belly dancers. The facade of the restaurant is modeled after Ait Ben Haddou, a group of earthen buildings surrounded by high walls in the Moroccan desert. Tangerine Cafe is a quick-service dining location at the front of the pavilion, offering, at the time of its opening, shawarma platters, vegetable platters, wraps, Mediterranean specialties, side dishes, baked goods, and specialty beverages. The current menu features kebabs, breads, dips, and a dessert. We'll talk about that as well. Spice Road Table was added to the pavilion in January 2014, making the immersion of this pavilion even more 360, with the table service restaurant sitting on the edge of the World Showcase Lagoon, extending the scope of the pavilion across the World Showcase walkway. The restaurant features a menu of Mediterranean-inspired small plates like kefta, dolma, and hummus fries, along with a menu of cocktails in both indoor and outdoor dining spaces inspired by the Moroccan seaside. Spice Road Table also offers a walk-up bar that allows guests to take cocktails to go, and I actually did that when I was just there, and it was lovely. Oasis Sweets and Sips is a counter on the lagoon serving assorted traditional pastries like baklava and griba and a selection of specialty alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages like mint tea, mimosas, sangria, and more. So the shopping. The pavilion is home to numerous shops, largely located in the back portion of the pavilion, the Medina, in order to replicate the experience of bustling marketplaces and bazaars in cities like Fez. Shops include Tangier Traders, Marketplace in the Medina, Casablanca Carpets, the Brass Bazaar, and more and more. I walked around there when I was there 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, whenever it was. It appeared as though everything was open, but I was looking at the Walt Disney World map today, and it said currently unavailable. And I just feel like that sums up everything going on with this pavilion right now. I am just confused. Like, I don't really know what I saw. I don't know what the state of these stores even is.
Currently unavailable?
Yes.
On the map?
Yeah. It was strange.
Of just areas that you can walk into?
Like, meaning like you're not going to be able to shop here? I don't know. Confusing. And we're going to talk about that. The whole thing is very weird. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. There is also Souk Al Maghreb, which is located on the edge of the World Showcase Lagoon between Spice Road Table and Oasis Sweets and Sips, offering some traditional clothing and accessories and usually some Aladdin merchandise. So characters. Guests can currently visit Princess Jasmine in her special meet and greet area in the Old City portion of the pavilion. Since the pavilion's inception, Aladdin and the Genie have also made appearances at different points, and for a second, I thought I imagined that, and I couldn't find evidence of it. And today, I found a picture of me getting the Genie's autograph in front of the little water wheel that you used to be able to see better before Spice Road Table was there. Yeah. So attractions. The Morocco Pavilion has never been home to a ride or major attraction. The Gallery of Arts and History in the Nouvelle Ville portion of the pavilion houses some kind of interactive exhibit that changes, I guess, every few years or so. So since 2019, it's been home to Race Against the Sun, Ancient Technique to Modern Competition, which showcases 2 modern-day competitions from Morocco, the Marathon of the Sands and the Rally of the Gazelles, along with the history of the Berbers, the ancient inhabitants of the Sahara. From 1995 to 2015, the pavilion featured Mo Rockin, a musical act that set rock music to Arabian rhythms. And from 2016 to 2020, it featured a music and dance act, Benet Houariat. A band called Atlas Fusion occasionally performs on a stage in front of the pavilion. But again, when I was there a week and a half ago or so, it looked completely closed off and I did not see a schedule for any future performances. Maybe there is one next week. Maybe next week it will be back, but there is truly no way of knowing. So let's get into how things have really started going wrong at the Morocco Pavilion. And it all has to do with the pandemic. The Morocco Pavilion, of course, closed with the rest of Walt Disney World and Epcot on March 15th, 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. When Epcot and the World Showcase reopened on July 15th, 2020, Restaurant Marrakesh remained closed. This wasn't super unusual at the time, as far as I could find, only Mexico and Italy had table service restaurants operating on reopening day. Okay, in April 2020, just going back a few months for a moment. In April 2020, Marrakesh Moroccan Restaurant LLC, who ran the food and merchandise outlets in the pavilion, filed for a Paycheck Protection Program loan of $1 to $2 million in order to retain what it listed as 260 jobs affected by COVID-related closures in the pavilion. PPP loans were designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll, obviously when things were not operating, and the loan was approved. So let's go forward in time again. We're back to the summer when Walt Disney World reopened of 2020. As the summer went on, trouble really began to brew at the pavilion. After reopening briefly with the pavilion, Tangerine Cafe closed in August 2020 with basically no explanation from Disney, with the rumor being that it was due to a lack of demand from lower Disney World crowds caused by the pandemic. Then, in September 2020, Disney filed a UCC financing statement with the state of Florida against Marrakesh Moroccan Restaurant LLC. Basically, this meant that Disney claimed the right to keep, quote, all goods, inventory, the furnishings, and all other items of personal property belonging to the debtor, which are or may be put into the facilities, and all proceeds of the foregoing. So basically, Disney's like, if you don't have the money and you're still in debt, we are taking everything from you. Interestingly, when I was reading about this, I read some comments in some articles, and some folks who said that they knew or related to cast members claimed that cast members were actually being treated very poorly by Marrakesh Moroccan Restaurant LLC, and that they were actually glad there was a chance Disney might take ownership of the pavilion because of it. So just, I think, a perspective just to know. There's nuance to everything here. So Marrakesh Moroccan Restaurant LLC didn't have the money, and Disney officially took back ownership of the pavilion on October 21st, 2020. And since then, the pavilion has been in a state of half closure, construction, and very bizarre, let's just say, quote, refurbishment. Let's start with the Souk Al Maghreb gift shop. This went through a series of closures after Disney took ownership of the pavilion. So the gift shop reopened in December 2020, featuring Aladdin merchandise. Then it closed again in October 2021 for, quote, another refurbishment. It was expected to reopen in February 2022, and it didn't end up back in operation until May 2022. So we had this gift shop right on the walkway, just completely shuttered. This is a relatively small gift shop. What exactly was going on there that took so long? Or did Disney just not care enough to keep the, quote, refurb on track? The shop now largely sells traditional Moroccan clothing and accessories with some Aladdin merchandise mixed in. And we need to talk about the Aladdin factor later, which we will. Then there came the treatment of Restaurant Marrakesh. Not only did it feel like Disney was putting no effort toward reopening the restaurant, then it got worse. In summer 2021, it became a rest stop, basically just like tables from the restaurant and AC for people to stop in. And then in July 2022, it was announced that it would become a Florida Blue Medicare lounge that September.
What?
Now, these lounges have popped up in the parks before. They offer AC, phone charging, light refreshments. But I am just horrified that it took place in this stunning space built by actual Moroccan artisans when there are so many places in Epcot for a lounge. Let's talk about the place where the Odyssey used to be. I mean, whatever. That's the part that truly started to make things feel like a hellscape for me. It seems like this lounge has also returned for food and wine this year, and it just makes me so upset. Construction walls also became a regular fixture at the pavilion, with some of the most obstructive going up in March 2024, obscuring basically the entire front of the pavilion, with the fountain behind them and the Babu Jaloud facade covered with a tarp. So basically saying to anyone passing by, do not enter. Even though in an article they read, I think Disney made sure to emphasize that, Jasmine was still meeting guests and the Tangerine Cafe was still open. This was not a welcoming or open-looking pavilion in any way, shape, or form. I saw these walls up when I was there in April, and it made the already quiet pavilion truly a shell of itself. The walls came down in June 2024, revealing what seemed like no major refurbishments, except what has become an understandable source of anger online: a retiled main courtyard and fountain. Gone is the intricate, subtle, handcrafted tiling, replaced by what feels like a preschool version of the same idea, replacing subtle teals, coppers, and creams with checkered, bright white, blue, and yellow. Again, I will share photos on our socials. Inexplicably, Disney also replaced the pavilion's lovely shady trees with palm-style trees that won't provide any shade for guests in a pretty wide open and sunny pavilion. And the question is, why? I have not been able to find any signs of disrepair before the construction began. What is actually going on here?
Is the fountain gone?
The fountain's there. It's just retiled
Okay.
and it's just like a shell of itself.
Ew.
It's there.
I mean, at least it's there, because I was fully expecting you to tell me that the fountain is no longer there, because that's very much the Disney way right now.
Yeah, right. So speaking of that, let's really get into, I've given you a high level of kind of what's going wrong, but let's really dig into it. And let's talk about why Disney needs to give this pavilion the care and attention that is truly embedded in its very walls. What makes all of this neglect and downgrading even more tragic is the fact that this pavilion was originally built from the heart of and with the hands of the people of Morocco. This isn't one corporation mishandling the property of another corporation. I do not see ownership of the pavilion ever returning to the country of Morocco, so Disney owes the country respect and the carrying on of the legacy that Morocco began. Think about all of the features of this pavilion that I just described. It is truly a treasure trove that too few guests have deeply explored because, and I can't believe I'm saying this, right now it's way more about vibes, and we know I love vibes, than anything truly meaningful or interactive. So let's just talk about the major things that Disney is doing wrong. Let's start with the neglect of Restaurant Marrakesh. So on a personal note, this was a cannot miss dining location for me and my family when it was operating. The setting was beautiful and it was always so serene. It felt so far away from the crowds and the chaos of the park at the back of the pavilion. We actually even ate there once at the same time as Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, and his family. So I think that really speaks to its seclusion and the true quality of this restaurant. The cast members who worked there were always so kind, and the food was delicious. We would drink our weight in iced mint tea, and I was thinking about this when I was reading over the old menu. I would do anything right now to have the beef bruat roll appetizer again. It was sweet and savory, and it was delicious.
I never ate there.
Oh my God. I was thinking about it. We basically went when I was growing up once we went for the first time, we came back every year. And not only because it was always such a quality experience, because it was so unique. Moroccan cuisine is not easy to find, even somewhere with as much culinary diversity as New York. Then we have the incredible performers. Here I go, harping again on another topic that we keep returning to again and again here on Poor Unfortunate Podcast. Live performers are absolutely everything. The folk musicians and belly dancers who performed at Restaurant Marrakesh are absolutely burned into my childhood memory. Honestly, more so than many other things I experienced in the parks at that age. It was a real human experience happening right in front of me, featuring music and dance styles I had not seen or heard anywhere else. It was so special, especially because the restaurant was never overcrowded, so we always had real interactive moments with the performers. So what should Disney do here? Reopen the damn restaurant. The pavilion deserves, at the very least, a table service dining experience, especially when food is such a rich and important aspect of Moroccan culture. Perhaps Disney considered something not to be working at this restaurant since its reservations were never filled. But I think that's important. Not only does Epcot desperately need a restaurant that guests can, walk up to without fighting at 6 a.m. 90 days in advance for a reservation, but Disney needs to reinvest in making this restaurant even more of an event than it already was. In its position at the back of the Medina, the restaurant feels like the centerpiece of the pavilion. And if you've ever seen its stunning interior, you know it has the potential to fit that role. Other pavilions without a major ride, film, or other attraction offer really experiential dining. like Teppan Edo in Japan or Beer Garden in Germany. And Morocco deserves the same ability to attract guests. So how can Disney do this? Here are a few options. Okay, here's one thing we could do. Transition the periodic live performances to a full show with timed seatings. Really make the performers the heart of the experience. And the way that it was set up, they would perform in the middle, basically in the round almost. It is like it's calling to make this a true dining and performance sit-down experience. Okay, or we could kind of change up the cuisine experience that you have in the restaurant. Now that the pavilion has Spice Road table service available for both lunch and dinner, there is an opportunity to create something different in Restaurant Marrakesh in order to refresh interest in the location. In Morocco, the traditional tea ceremony is the ultimate expression of hospitality. Maybe there is an opportunity there to create a dining location centered in some way around tea. Now, I am not knowledgeable enough about Moroccan culture and traditions to suggest exactly how this should be done. But this also brings me to my next point. Another thing that Disney is doing wrong, which is gradually de-authenticating the pavilion after leaving it under construction for far too long. So like I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of outrage online after Disney lifted the construction walls around the pavilion a couple of months ago, especially around the tiling around the pavilion's central fountain. And yes, people want to make fun of Disney adults and the things that we talk about. It actually really is a problem. And it's indicative of forces that a lot of us feel like are already at work in the parks. Forces that genericize, if that's even a word, and take the easy way out, often at the expense of authenticity, which was truly the original intention for World Showcase. And it feels like it's happening without rhyme or reason, which I think is the reason it's really putting a lot of us on edge. It feels like a culture shift within Disney rather than some poor decisions about parts of the park that maybe needed fixing or updating. So here's one example of that. The Tangerine Cafe menu. Not only is the menu currently half the size that it was before the pandemic, but once again, they have taken away one of my favorite World Showcase treats. I absolutely loved sitting down in the afternoon for a nice iced mint tea and the vegetable platter. I think about it all the time. It had falafel, couscous salad, hummus, tabbouleh, lentil salad, and marinated olives for just $14. And this was the first time that 9-year-old me had ever even heard of tabbouleh, never mind tasted it. And I learned about it and I loved it. And we came home and I asked my mom to find it somewhere for me when we got home. Most of the drink menu of Tangerine Cafe is now alcohol, catering to the festival and drinking aspect of World Showcase that, don't get me wrong, I enjoy, but I think also has its limits that Disney is not keeping to its limits. And now the food is just a kebab, bread with dips, falafel pita, or pistachio cake. It's less than half the size of what it used to be. Not to mention, and again, there's no way to trace where these things have gone or if they will ever come back online, which I find fascinating. To my knowledge, because it wasn't open or it didn't appear like it would ever be open again last time I was there was a lovely little counter in the back of the cafe where you could get pastries and specialty coffee and tea. And as I have said before, I always had the kindest cast members working at it. If you're not only going to keep the pavilion's larger table service restaurant closed, why are you continuing to limit the quick service options as well? Another way the pavilion is becoming inauthentic and Disney-fied is through the decentering of cast members. If you recall, back when I was describing attractions and entertainment, there is no longer a standing music or dance act playing like a long-term engagement in the pavilion. This is on top of the loss of the performers from Restaurant Marrakesh. There even used to be, and I have never been to Epcot during the holidays, so if anyone is out there and tells me I'm wrong, let me know. But as far as I have found, this does not exist anymore. There used to be a seasonal holiday offering in which storyteller Tarji would share Moroccan customs for the holidays of Ramadan and Ashura. And what an important piece of representation lost in a park that is so Christmas-focused. Where can Muslim families, for example, see their holiday traditions represented now? I am genuinely asking because I may not know. Again, I've never been to Epcot during the holidays, but this is a major miss regardless.
I went to Epcot during the holidays 2-3 years ago, and I didn't see anything. Now, granted, I was also busting my ass around that park because it was a
I know.
literal construction zone.
Yup.
But I didn't see anything.
All right, let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And on that note, we need more culture sharing opportunities. I would say American tourists are least familiar with Moroccan culture out of all of the pavilions in the World Showcase. If we want to be true to the original heart and purpose of the World Showcase, extra care should be taken to allow the people of Morocco to really represent their country. So what to do? Involve the embassy and the tourism board, who are still involved in the pavilion. It feels so petty to me that just because Morocco no longer sponsors the pavilion, Disney made the choice, for example, not to hire new Moroccan artisans to replace the fountain tile if it really did need replacing. It truly feels like they're setting the message that those touches aren't worth the price tag. And that's a Disney and a World Showcase that I really don't recognize or like. Something else that Disney is doing wrong. Aside from dining at Spice Road Table, there is simply not enough going on in the pavilion as it currently stands. So the shopping. There, unfortunately, are way too many stores that are not quite distinct enough. While Medina markets and bazaars are a major part of Moroccan culture, I'm not convinced that guests are interested enough in authentic merchandise from any pavilion outside of, at most, 2 stores. If a guest is not looking to shop due to lack of interest in shopping or a lack of, budget because it's so hella expensive to go to Walt Disney World, there isn't a reason for them to venture to the back of the pavilion, except, of course, to see the incredible architecture, which might not be enough for return visitors, or for those super warm weather months, it's brutal, and it just might not be something that people are able to do. The one, quote, attraction in the pavilion, the Gallery of Arts and History, is not interesting or interactive enough. Race Against the Sun. Oh my God. What a dud. Now, here's the thing. The topic itself of this exhibit should be interesting. One of the things it covers is the Rally of the Gazelles. This is an off-road, all-woman desert rally. That's a pretty fucking cool topic. You already have me. I'm like, tell me more. You see pictures of the exhibit, and then there's this half-car structure in front of a screen, making you think it's some kind of interactive arcade or VR racing activity. No, it's a photo op. Truly, Disney, who is going to give a rat's ass about that? Who wants their photo taken in a half car in front of a screen that shows a sunrise?
What?
And sure, other exhibits in other pavilions, like the one about the Norse gods in Norway, are very small and very simple. But Norway has a ride, so it's different. On top of all this, Disney is just also not taking advantage of the intricacy of the pavilion's architecture. The winding streets of the Medina portion of the pavilion add a sense of surprise and mystery that is truly unmatched in any other pavilion. You can truly lose yourself in them in the best way, and this kind of atmosphere deserves a feature that is as exciting as it feels to walk through it. More interactive elements, less shopping.
Yeah, more than any other pavilion in Epcot, I have absolutely no sense of direction or scale within that pavilion.
Yes.
And I think that lends itself very much in its favor.
It
for
does.
That pavilion. It feels endless.
It does. And back to my original point, I really had to look at maps and photos of this because I've been there 100 times and I don't feel like I fully have a sense of where the pathways lead. And I think that's magical. So this next point that I have, I don't have anything to really talk about or support it with because it's more of something that I think you and I can discuss. Does this pavilion need a major attraction? I don't think it would even be possible if the answer was yes. Does it deserve one? I believe it does. Do I have some straight off the top of my head ideas about what it could be? Maybe a few. But it needs, if we're not going to go the dinner theater route with Restaurant Marrakesh, we need something.
Yeah.
We need something.
Even if it's not one of those fucking Circle Vision videos.
No, please
but
no.
Even if it's more of an Impressions of France sort of situation,
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to do a film, do that type of film. But honestly, it should be an indoor stage show. If they're not going to bring back Restaurant Marrakesh, turn that place into some sort of indoor theater where
An
people
in the round theater.
because people will love an opportunity to go. People flock to the American Adventure just because they're like, oh my God, this is 45 minutes in air conditioning.
Yeah.
When the rains come during the summertime and the thunderstorms and people duck into a pavilion that's nearest to them so that they can like hunker down.
Yeah.
How fantastic would it be that if they go into the Morocco pavilion, there's a show?
Yes. Yes. I agree.
I mean, that's one of the things that like when people do that in the Germany pavilion, sometimes, I mean, the beer garden holds a lot of people. So it's usually pretty okay for you to like try and see if you can get a last minute reservation for the beer garden.
Right. Exactly. Yes. That last time we were there with a big group with my family, we were able to go there if we wanted to. And that's important. And honestly, I feel like now the tea concept and the show could combine because as far as I know, I've never been to Morocco, but as far as I know, my husband's been there. So I asked him, a tea ceremony, it's not a full meal or anything, but what if a tea ceremony what if the tea ceremony even happened on the stage and you get to learn about that and then you get tea served to you? That'd be special. It'd be special.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's touch on the last major thing that Disney is doing wrong in this pavilion. And that is not making a choice as it relates to the pavilion's connection or lack thereof to Aladdin. As I mentioned earlier, guests can currently meet Jasmine in the pavilion's Medina, and I have spotted Aladdin merchandise often at the Souk Al Maghreb merchandise location. World Showcase particularly features princesses. Snow White in Germany, Belle and Aurora in France, Mulan in China. Now, granted, all of those princesses' stories actually take place in those countries. But then we have...
But hold on. But also, like, not really.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It is never explicitly said
True.
in either Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or Sleeping Beauty that it is taking place in Germany or France.
True.
Now, are the influences Germanic and French? Absolutely. But that is something that we put on them.
Yeah.
In the same way that I think you're about to say we put on Aladdin with Morocco, where it's like, this is the closest fit.
Right. And of course, we have Anna and Elsa in Norway, which I'm about to talk about. And so now here's the thing. Jasmine, I love her. I want guests to meet her. Okay. I have seen this come up way too many times online, so I just want to remind everybody. Agrabah, where Jasmine is from, is a fictional location. It's not real. Just wanted to put that out there. It is inspired in part by Baghdad, with the Sultan's palace taking inspiration from the Taj Mahal in Agra, India. So, you can do the math there. Agra, Baghdad, you get Agrabah. While the architecture in Aladdin reflects the Islamic style represented in Morocco, that's basically where the connection between Morocco and Aladdin ends. Concerns have been raised about Jasmine's presence in the pavilion tainting its authenticity. Now listen, there's a similar choice happening in the Norway pavilion. Anna and Elsa meet guests there, and they are from another fictional, albeit Norwegian-inspired location, Arendelle. But while the Norway pavilion has basically been taken over by Frozen, Disney hasn't made a clear choice when it comes to Aladdin being featured in the Morocco pavilion. The description of the Jasmine meet and greet on the Walt Disney World website feels purposefully like avoiding, like acknowledging it while not acknowledging it. It says, pay a visit to Princess Jasmine in her shining, shimmering, splendid home away from home, a land where the camels roam. Experience a new fantastic point of view as she shares tales from her desert days and Arabian Nights. While you snap a photo, don't you dare close your eyes. Perhaps she'll inspire you to explore the Morocco pavilion, which always reminds her of her native Agrabah.
I mean, they literally said Arabian Nights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the United Arab Emirates exists. India exists.
Yeah.
And those are in Asia. And Morocco is fully in Africa.
Yeah. Disney references several times in this description that Jasmine isn't from this country and doesn't exactly belong here. Whereas, interestingly, the Anna and Elsa meet and greet simply says, venture north to a charming home fit for a royal welcome from Elsa and Anna. Just a lot less tap dancing. Because Disney is aware, and they are choosing to just straddle the line. So what to do? Regardless of how we might feel about it, Disney as a whole has committed to including IP in the World Showcase pavilions. Disney does not currently own a property that takes place in Morocco. So what do? Do they lean into including Aladdin in the pavilion, banking on the love for the film and its characters and the ability to include more child-focused features in order to maybe renew some excitement around the pavilion? Or do they honor the authenticity of the pavilion and decide not to include any Disney IP until maybe one day they set a film or a show or whatever in Morocco? I can honestly see both sides of this from the Disney perspective, at least. My inkling is that Disney is more likely to continue down the path of IP inclusion. But either way, the most important thing that they can do is make a damn choice. The indecision is making the pavilion feel very diluted and feels a lot like the retiling work, neglectful and lazy. So in short, I am truly, or not in short, in long.
Not in short at
I
all.
am not in short at all. I'm so sorry.
I'm here for it.
I am at a loss as to why Disney is treating this beautiful pavilion so poorly. Although I've heard folks discuss the possibility that they are underhandedly punishing the previous owners for falling into debt and maybe not managing the pavilion well, that pettiness actually makes no sense. Disney could use that energy to actually say, I told you so, and prove that they are the ones best equipped to run the pavilions anyway, by making it even more lively, beautiful, and authentic than ever before. So what's going on here? Like, I really do get caught on, like, for whatever reason that was unclear to me, they felt like they needed to retile the pavilion. Why didn't they just hire Moroccan artisans once again? I don't understand. There's just like, I can't follow the thought. So yes, a lot of focus and money have been going to France, for example, with the opening of the new Ratatouille portion of the pavilion. But like, while that's been happening, Japan has gotten a new restaurant within the last year. So I'm inclined to think it's because Disney mistakenly and like very upsettingly and troublingly believes that there isn't interest from guests in Moroccan culture. There is truly no denying that pavilions representing countries whose populations are mostly white receive the most updated rides and food offerings from Disney. Just something to think about. Morocco deserves to be bustling and interesting and full of visitors. And Disney's failure to allow this is something I could never see Walt approving of.
Yeah.
Please go show this pavilion some love during your next visit. Whatever is open, which feels very unpredictable. And please, I was just thinking about this because it landed in my inbox. When you visit Disney and you get the survey, talk about the Morocco pavilion in the survey. Because not only does this pavilion deserve more and has so much potential for more because it started as more, but we got to let Disney know that this behavior isn't going to fly with the people who truly love and care about the parks.
Whew. Yeah, the Morocco pavilion was similarly to Norway, the Norway pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my gateways as a kid to those countries.
Absolutely.
So that when all of a sudden I'm older and I'm interested in classic films and I'm watching Casablanca, I'm like, I know exactly where this is. And I know about some of the culture of Morocco and I can contextualize things. And when I'm taking an AP World History class and we're talking about Islamic countries and things like that, I have a context to refer to. And that is what the World Showcase at Epcot gave me as a kid.
Yeah.
That I am very fearful that kids aren't going to be able to get now. Adults aren't going to be able to get.
Yes, because I love to eat and drink around the world. Number one, that was one of the things as a kid that was memorable to me about the Morocco pavilion. So it is important. Yet at the same time, it's just like the constant festival drinking around the world culture, I feel like is wearing down the original intention for the World Showcase.
Yeah. Well, especially combined with this new vision of the World Showcase.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to hopefully try and bring our spirits up a little bit.
I'm so excited.
Because I do think that there is one pavilion that is doing it right.
Emphasis on one.
Yeah, emphasis on one. Yeah, so right now, it's very, very clear that the World Showcase is going through a lot of growing pains as this sort of rebrand of Epcot in general is happening. And so the conversation around authenticity and then change, the two are often going to be at odds with one another. But I think the Mexico Pavilion is a shining example of what a pavilion of the World Showcase should be. It is one of, if not the best pavilion in Epcot because of its ability to remain authentic while continuing to embrace effective, meaningful change. Forgive me on pronunciations. I did look them up, and if I'm butchering them, like deepest apologies. I will take this moment to cite some of my sources: The Kingdom Insider, The Unofficial Guide, allears.net, wdwinfo.com, Wikipedia, mickeyblog.com, the San Angel Inn, Mariachi Cobras, and Palma's Restaurant Group websites, and then a very special shout out to the Diz Fairs YouTube video on the Mexico Pavilion from earlier this year. They really went deep into this pavilion from its creation into what you can experience there today, and they were a fantastic reference to have as I was preparing this. So I'm going to start with some background.
Yay.
The Mexico Pavilion of the World Showcase opened with the rest of the park on opening day, October 1st, 1982. Facing the World Showcase Lagoon from the main entrance of the park, it is the first pavilion of the World Showcase starting on the left. Now, obviously, there is great debate about where to start in the World Showcase. For me, I'm always a Mexico first guy. There is so much to take in at this pavilion that I don't want to run the risk of missing anything here. So it is always my first stop. The pavilion depicts a large, ancient Mesoamerican pyramid that guests can enter by either climbing up some steps in the front or traveling through a winding Yucatan jungle-inspired walking path and ramp. This takes guests into a continually changing gallery exhibition of Mexican folk art and other cultural displays before immersing them in the Plaza de los Amigos, an indoor Mexican plaza that serves as a hub to shopping, dining, and the pavilion's attraction.
Yes.
The immersive area is set at twilight, the time of friends and family, and features a fountain, large facades and balconies of Mexican homes and storefronts, and an indoor lagoon featuring another Mesoamerican pyramid and a backdrop of a smoking volcano.
Yes. Tell me more.
Back outside, along the walking path around the World Showcase Lagoon, headed towards the Norway Pavilion, are other dining areas, vendors, photo opportunities with Donald Duck wearing a Mexican serape, and live performances. The Mexico Pavilion boasts 5 dining locations.
Count them, 5.
The San Angel Inn restaurant, an indoor table service restaurant that's located in the center of Plaza de los Amigos along the scenic waterway of the pavilion's boat ride. La Cava del Tequila, a small, high-demand themed tequila bar that is adjacent to the San Angel Inn restaurant, serving a wide variety of authentic Mexican tequilas, margaritas, cocktails, and light fare. This bar also features exclusive tastings for an additional cost with certified tequila ambassadors. Then there is La Hacienda de San Angel, an indoor table service restaurant located outside of the pyramid along the World Showcase Lagoon, offering beautiful views of the park's nighttime spectacular. There's the Cantina de San Angel, an outdoor counter service restaurant along the World Showcase Lagoon, serving a limited menu of Mexican fare with casual seating. And then lastly, there's Choza de Margarita, an outdoor margarita bar featuring frozen and on-the-rocks margaritas and snacks. There's a wide variety of shopping in the Plaza de los Amigos with continually changing goods and merchandise. Items range from Disney merchandise like Coco t-shirts to Arribas Brothers cut and blown glass, Mexican food products, ceramics, art, and more. The Mexico Pavilion is also one of the few pavilions of the World Showcase to contain an attraction. But not just any attraction, a ride.
Yes!
The Grand Fiesta Boat Tour starring the Three Caballeros is a slow-moving boat ride akin to It's a Small World. And this ride takes guests through gorgeous scenery and various regions of Mexico like Manzanillo, Chichen Itza, and Acapulco as Jose and Panchito attempt to find a missing Donald Duck before their concert in Mexico City. Previously, the attraction existed as El Rio del Tiempo, the River of Time, and was largely similar. La 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 la.
That song is the song that is inside my heart. It really is.
I know. That was the original Nothing Can Stop Us Now.
Yes, it was.
So El Rio del Tiempo, it was a largely similar ride, taking guests through the creation of Mexico from the beginning of time to present day and featuring different Mexican locales and cultural traditions, just without the added element of the Three Caballeros. The fan favorite moment is the merchandise hawkers who follow your boat from screen to screen trying to sell you things.
Wait, I thought that was personal to me and my family. That is
No,
so
that's
funny.
the fan favorite moment.
Incredible.
That's how you know it's good, baby.
That's so
when
true.
You think it's something that
I
only
thought that
you
was
know.
Just us.
No, everyone loves the merchandise hawkers.
And I love that.
That's
okay.
the moment. Rio del Tiempo was the only ride in the World Showcase on opening day, and it continued to run through 2007 when it was rethemed to the Grand Fiesta Tour. Outside near the Hacienda de San Angel, as you head toward the Norway Pavilion, you can see two live entertainment experiences. You have the Mariachi Cobre, the world-famous 12-piece mariachi band performing music from Jalisco, Mexico in 25-minute sets. This band is over 50 years old and has been performing at Epcot since it opened in 1982. And then there's also Viva Mexico, which is a musical show that features songs, instruments, and dances from different regions of Mexico. And this usually plays whenever the Mariachi Cobra is not playing. So there's a lot more to talk about with this pavilion, both in what it offers and how it was made. But to bring things back to my original point of why the Mexico Pavilion is such the ideal to strive toward, it all comes down to authenticity and meaningful change. So let's start with authenticity. For a pavilion to feel like a true representation of a country, it cannot afford to be a caricature. It needs to distill all of what that country is down to its essence and rebuild it through a blending of a faithful representation of its cultures, its peoples, and its traditions. This is a lead with reverence approach. And while the meaning of this word means different things to different people, that is what I would call authentic. So let's start looking at the authenticity of this pavilion with how Epcot's representation of Mexico was designed and made, and then how it currently operates today. In 1975, years ahead of the opening of the park, it was announced that Mexico would be one of the pavilions of the World Showcase. Originally, Ex Atencio, the Imagineer behind attractions like Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion, was leading the project with concept artist Tim Gillian, who served as one of the concept artists for the park. The designers and Imagineers at Disney, in an attempt to create the most authentic representation of the country as they could, attempted to get the Mexican government to participate in the process. A presentation of the plans for the pavilion was made to the Mexican president and his family in his presidential residence, ultimately to no avail. Instead, the designers pivoted and contacted Mexican exchange students and the Mexican ambassador to the United States to have them weigh in on the current plans for the pavilion. Unfortunately for Atencio and his team, they were not impressed, critiquing the heavy reliance on the Spanish colonial architecture in the design, and as Disfarers, who did the video, would put it in their video, quote, supposedly too many piñatas. They said that Disney would need more direct experience with Mexico in order to properly capture the country in the pavilion. So in an effort to represent Mexico as authentically as possible, Ex Atencio decided to seek out a Mexican artist, reaching out to Eddie Martinez. Martinez was a Los Angeles artist who had been working at Disney as a muralist in the Hall of Presidents in 1970, not knowing that just 6 years later, Ex Atencio would be bringing him in to develop early concepts of the Mexico Pavilion's ride-through attraction. Martinez had taken a personal trip to Mexico earlier in the 70s for the benefit of his own personal artwork. He visited all over from small villages and colonial pueblos to archaeological sites of ancient Mexican civilizations to cities and museums. This visit serendipitously informed Martinez's work as he developed El Rio del Tiempo to bring to life Mexico's culture and history from its ancient civilizations to modern day. After the project was approved in 1979, Martinez was then named production manager for the entire Mexico Pavilion.
Oh, wow.
This dude in 6 years went from being a muralist in the Hall of Presidents to the production manager of the entire Mexico Pavilion.
That is so cool.
If you think that's cool, wait until you hear this. In this position, Martinez sought out as many Mexican and Mexican-American artists as he could to bring the most authentic Mexico possible to Epcot. He strategically placed these artists and designers as heads of entire departments, ranging from layout artists to costumers and choreographers for the attraction. Martinez even brought on Dr. John Paul, an archaeologist from UCLA, to advise on the project. His background in ancient art and writing systems of the Nahua, Mixtec, Zapotec, and Aztec civilizations of highland Mexico helped create the accurate representations of pre-Columbian, so that's pre-Columbus, art and writing that is seen throughout the pavilion. This is also where famous Disney Imagineer Joe Rohde, who would go on to design Animal Kingdom, got his start working as a scenic painter and model designer.
Wow.
By the end of their work on the pavilion, it was largely agreed that Eddie Martinez and his team of artists and artisans effectively captured the essence of Mexico in the pavilion. So now let's go through some of the different parts of the pavilion and point out the particularly noteworthy, authentic representations of Mexican culture. So let's first look at the scenic design, and we'll start with the pyramid itself. The design of the pyramid is a fusion of different artistic styles from all over Mexico, especially the Aztec, Mayan, and Toltec civilizations. Much of the pyramid draws inspiration from the Mayan temple of Kukulkan, El Castillo, that still stands in Chichen Itza. This is a similar four-sided pyramid with a rectangular temple on top, which in Epcot's case serves as a control tower for the nighttime spectaculars that take place on World Showcase Lagoon. The serpent heads that protrude along the stairs to the top of the pyramid represent the Aztec relative to the Mayans' plumed serpent god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent and Aztec god of life Quetzalcoatl. The designs for these heads are pretty closely modeled after the actual stone sculptures found at the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, which is the third largest pyramid at Teotihuacan. To the right and left of the pyramid, you'll see depicted the different faces of Tlaloc, the Aztec god of rain, earthly fertility, and water. These are the sculptures in the facade that have the large noses, which catch rainwater. The main relief that blocks the staircase to the top of the pyramid depicts a mural of Montezuma, king of the Aztecs, meeting Europeans for the first time, and the Europeans are represented by the figure that has the blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So all that, so authentic. Look, we're pulling directly from these different places. So now let's talk about the plaza. First off, Disney knew that the sensation of stepping down tricks the mind into feeling like they are being transported somewhere new, thereby selling the immersion. This was applied to the Plaza de los Amigos via the two curved ramps that descend into the plaza and bring you into the illusion of being back outside again at night in a bustling marketplace.
Yeah.
Atencio Martinez and their team use many of the lighting and scenic design techniques seen in Pirates of the Caribbean to achieve the dramatic nighttime atmosphere for the area, which is why for so many, it feels like they get to walk around in one of those attractions.
Yes, yes.
The plaza takes much of its inspiration from the city of Taxco in Guerrero. The city was known for its relationship to silver, both the mining and the crafting of it. The city became known for its silverwork, picturesque landscapes, and beautiful Spanish-style architecture, and so much of the economy was built around tourism, which is a very fitting choice to be captured in a theme park for tourists. All of this is represented in the red-tiled roofing of the buildings, the ironwork of the balconies along the second levels of the buildings, the painting and stonework, the strings of lanterns over the marketplace, and more. Perhaps the best way to look specifically at the authenticity of the plaza, though, is in its function, namely the shopping and the dining. So, under shopping, we've got the market vendors. The plaza is filled with stalls offering authentic Mexican goods ranging from clothing and hats to spices and cookware. Like, you can literally buy a bottle of Tajín from one of these stalls.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you would want to, because it's probably going to be like super duper expensive, and you can just go to the grocery store and get it, but you could if you wanted to. Rather than using this space as an opportunity to push Disney merch onto guests, they're being further brought into the immersion by interacting with the merchants in the plaza as they would if they were traveling to the marketplace themselves in the real place. I think this is perhaps one of the biggest things that sets the World Showcase in Epcot apart from a lot of other theme parks that center around real locations. They're using the shopping experience to further the storytelling and create the illusion. But I would even go a step further and say that the Mexico Pavilion does this especially well because of the layout. All of the products that you see in the open air market are authentically Mexican, and the more Disney-fied products are pushed more into the shops along the side, hidden behind walls and doorways. Now, that could all change tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for my last visit, that's what I saw.
Yep.
Additionally, in shopping, let's talk about the artisans. Art is such a big part of Mexican culture, and there are so many crafts on display in the Mexico Pavilion. Taking the ever-changing folk art gallery that you enter before reaching the plaza out of the equation, out in the market, there are many artists making and selling their crafts from the stalls. One of my favorite stalls to visit is the wood carving stall with the sculptures of hand-carved and painted animals that the artists are working on right there in front of you.
Yes, yes.
But back in the shops along the side, to the left if you're facing the indoor lagoon, you'll see La Princesa de Cristal and La Tienda Encantada. The former is a location for crystal and glass works from the Arribas brothers, and inside the shop there are glass blowers who you can watch make the items that you see and buy around the store.
Mm-hmm.
And as for La Tienda Encantada, this is the jewelry store, further bringing the history of Taxco as a jewelry destination to life inside the pavilion. And now we'll talk about dining, because we've got to.
Yes.
There's a lot to be said for the authenticity of the cuisine and dining that is offered throughout the Mexico Pavilion. I could go on and on about the menus available at each location, but I'm not going to, because I have a lot more that I want to talk about. And if we are looking for authenticity in dining, I think this pavilion's San Angel offerings will have you covered. The San Angel Inn is an actual restaurant in Mexico City that was founded in 1963. It had previously been a hotel, a school of architecture, design, and art history run by Jesuits, and was originally built with the intention of being a monastery. The restaurant is famous for its Mexican colonial architecture, decor, gardens and fountains, and cuisine. Their mission in creating this restaurant was, quote, to preserve the beauty of the gardens and original buildings, creating a unique and different atmosphere where the joy and happiness of the visitors would be carefully attended to by the hosts, rescuing history to delight the palate, end quote.
Ooh.
Which I think is just like a stunning rescuing history to delight the palate. Like,
oh my God.
I'm sold. In the 70s, Richard Debley Sr., whose father owned the San Angel Inn restaurant, found a gold Mickey that the Walt Disney Company had sent his parents. Shooting his proverbial shot, he contacted Disney and pitched bringing the culture and the cuisine of the San Angel Inn to the Mexico Pavilion planned for Epcot. Obviously, the pitch went over well because the Palmas restaurant group that owns the San Angel Inn supplies all of the food to the Mexico Pavilion. And that includes the restaurants and the festival booths. All the restaurants of the pavilion bear the name San Angel Inn to pay homage to the real restaurant in Mexico City that started the relationship. And today, the Palmas Restaurant Group manages and serves 13 locations in Walt Disney World, 6 in the Mexico Pavilion, 6 in Disney's Coronado Springs, and Frontero Conchino in Disney Springs.
Oh my God, and I love all of those places.
I truly do not know how you get more authentic than having an internationally renowned historical Mexican restaurant supplying and managing all of the cuisine in the pavilion.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Isn't that so special?
That is so cool.
People mix up all the different San Angel Inns and I get it, but it's because the way that the San Angel Inn and the Palmas restaurant, they see them all as part of the same restaurant.
That's
lovely. It's all an extension. Yeah. As for entertainment, briefly, I'll just mention some of the authentic Mexican entertainment that's available in this pavilion. As mentioned before, you've got the Mariachi Cobre, which is a world-renowned mariachi band that was founded in 1971 and has performed with nearly 50 symphony orchestras across the United States and Mexico.
No big deal.
That's fucking authentic. No big deal. But another really cool thing that the Mexico Pavilion gets to showcase are different holiday traditions. During the International Festival of the Holidays, many of the pavilions get to bring to life their traditions from around the globe. Maybe not so much the
Not
Morocco
if you're
Pavilion.
the Morocco
but
Pavilion. Yep.
over the years, the Mexico Pavilion has gotten to showcase a few of their traditions, including Los Tres Reyes, a performance to celebrate Three Kings Day or Epiphany, which is a cornerstone of Hispanic and Latinx culture, as well as Los Posadas with Mariachi Cobre, which means the inns, and is a religious festival from Mexico that commemorates Mary and Joseph's journey to Bethlehem. But even outside of the festivals, the Mexico Pavilion feels alive in its entertainment and traditions in celebrations of other holidays, like Dia de los Muertos, which has been honored with exclusive menu items, decorations, art installations, and even a performance with Mariachi Cobre and the characters from Coco. When distilling down an entire country to the size of a theme park pavilion, there are naturally going to be things lost, left behind, or otherwise simplified. But I would say the care that designers and Imagineers took in the creation of this pavilion, the scenic design, the dining, the shopping, the entertainment, has honored and celebrated Mexico, all while remaining accessible to guests who may have no experience with the culture. Regardless of your personal definition of authentic, there is little room to deny that the Mexico Pavilion has gone and continues to go to extraordinary lengths to create a truthful representation of Mexican culture, traditions, and people. And yes, many of the pavilions in the park have endeavored and achieved this as well. However, the key to the most successful pavilions at Epcot is also their flexibility. Over the years, as Disney has sought to infuse more of its intellectual property into Epcot, the mission of the park has subtly shifted. And this is increasingly apparent in the World Showcase. The World Showcase, as it stands now, has diverged a little from its original thesis of immersing guests in the cultures of the world to showcasing the cultures of the world and the Disney stories inspired by them. This last part is a pretty drastic shift when trying above all else to remain authentic. We've seen some pavilions go whole hog into embracing Disney IP, like how Norway Pavilion axed the beloved Maelstrom to take guests to the fictional kingdom of Arendelle from Frozen, which, listen, I'm not going to completely throw that choice to the wolves, but there is a reason why I'm not raving about the Norway Pavilion today in the way that I would have back when I was a kid. And it's because no other pavilion has adapted better to this type of change than the Mexico Pavilion.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about some of the notable changes. Largely, the Mexico Pavilion has withstood most change. There's a lot that has been unaltered to the pavilion from it originally being built. But the Mexico Pavilion has struck gold in marrying Disney properties alongside faithful representations of the country. And this stems from its use of Disney IP that is directly related to the country's culture, not inspired by, not just serving as a backdrop to a story like what we're doing with France and Sleeping Beauty, but where culture exists as an integral part of the story.
Side eye. I'm side-eyeing.
The Three Caballeros, this film, while dated AF, follows in the footsteps of Saludos Amigos in being a propaganda film to foster goodwill between Disney and Latin America. It follows Donald Duck as he charts an adventure through Latin America after receiving gifts from his friends Jose Carioca of Brazil and Panchito Pistoles of Mexico. In 2007, the Mexico Pavilion's attraction El Rio del Tiempo was refurbished and rethemed to the Grand Fiesta Tour starring the Three Caballeros. What works so well about this attraction in particular is that the intention of the original ride, showcasing Mexican culture to guests on a slow-moving boat ride, could remain exactly the same. The biggest change is that now we have Disney characters as our hosts. We're taking characters that we are familiar with and letting them share the customs and sights of a foreign country with us. And what's more is it all makes sense that these three characters would be filling this role because, after all, that is exactly what they're doing in the film. The Mexican culture was a cornerstone of the story of the Three Caballeros in a way that, say, True Norwegian, not Arendelian culture, was not a cornerstone of the story of Frozen.
Mm-hmm.
We are still taken through the various locations of Mexico that were seen previously in El Rio del Tiempo, with even some of the original footage being used or even recreated. It's almost as if this was the ride that has been here all along. And in my opinion, there is not a better attraction in the World Showcase that completes the task of the World Showcase in bringing guests into a country of the world and the world's inspired by said country.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to award one of the rides, it's got to be Grand Fiesta Tour.
Yeah.
And now let's talk about the other film that shows up inside the Mexico Pavilion, Coco. This is another film that places Mexican traditions, music, and folklore at the center of the story, centering around Dia de los Muertos. Following the release of the film, the Folk Art Gallery in the Mexico Pavilion displayed art inspired by Coco, Dia de los Muertos, and many of the traditions that were seen in the film. Coco served, as all of these films should in the World Showcase, as an ambassador to the country. The movie was a jumping off point or a point of access for guests to immerse themselves in Mexican culture and, God forbid, learn something. Currently, there is not much Coco in the pavilion outside of some merchandise, the folk art displays, and some live entertainment. In March of 2019, the Mariachi Cobre began performances of a new live show outside La Hacienda de San Angel called The Story of Coco, where they were joined by a handcrafted puppet of a guitar-wielding Miguel and folklorico dancers to tell his story, share his love of music, and recount his journey to find what matters most, his familia. This wasn't so much a change to the offerings of the pavilion, so much as an addition to it. This show comes and goes and is an addition to the repertoire of the Mariachi Cobra, allowing them to reach more guests through a story that they know in order to share the heritage and music of Mexico. It's always been rumored that the Mexico Pavilion might one day re-theme the attraction to something related to Coco or bring the property into the theming of the plaza. Currently, there are no announced plans to do so. But here's the thing. If they did, most folks would be pretty okay with it. Why? Because Coco is a story about Mexican culture. And by lifting Coco up, we wouldn't be putting Mexico down.
Mm-hmm.
This is the key to meaningful change and additions to the pavilions of the World Showcase. Use these stories to show guests something true, something that exists in their own world, something authentic. So at this point, when I was writing, I was like, you know what? I've reached the end of this. I can confidently say it. Mexico is the best pavilion of the World Showcase. No other pavilion has touched its care to remain a faithful representation of the culture while being flexible enough to use the stories and characters from Disney to bring people into a subversive educational environment. And I think with it being the best pavilion, it sort of settles the question of where do you start with a World Showcase? It's Mexico. There is so much to see and experience and hear and taste, and I don't want to miss a thing. I wouldn't want to be the dude drinking around the world too wasted to enjoy what this pavilion has to offer. I wouldn't want to be the person racing through the countries, risking that my time in Mexico is cut short and I can't do the Grand Fiesta Tour before fireworks. I would rather be the guy that starts and ends his tour of the World Showcase in Mexico, surrounded by my friends and family, sitting on the edge of the fountain under the cool, air-conditioned twilight of the Plaza de los Amigos.
Oh, yes.
I love this pavilion so much.
It's truly like there are a couple of locations in Disney World that make me go like, yeah, this is my happy place. And the Mexico Pavilion is totally one of them.
It's heaven.
We also ate at the San Angel Inn when we were just there, and it was so I haven't eaten there in years.
So
it
good?
was so
What
delicious.
did you get?
We got enchiladas with plantains on the side. We got what did we get? We got an appetizer. What was it? It was delicious. But also, my husband Christopher got a mezcal tasting flight because he's out of his mind, but he loved it. And it was served with crickets on the side.
Amazing.
It was so cool.
And I didn't even talk about La Cava,
Yeah.
where the tequila bar, which is super duper limited, but the theming in that area
Yeah.
is like,
Yep.
it's like a hacienda for tequila. Like it's like a distillery inside there. It's incredible. Did you get the avocado margarita?
No, because I can't have avocado. And I saw it go
shit.
by. I saw it go by and I was like, God damn, I wish I could drink that. It
Shit.
looks so good.
Honestly, kind of worth the anaphylactic shock because like it is, I shit you not, the best margarita I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And I just had a sip of Aaron's and I was like, this is the best margarita I've ever had in my life.
God. Also, one of my most prized Disney souvenirs ever is from the Mexico Pavilion from when I was like 3. And it's a hand-painted maraca. And it's like I don't know where it is now, but I can see it and I can feel it in my mind's eye. And it was like so precious to me when I was little. And it's just, yeah, it was like all of these hand-painted like instruments were part of this like little stall. It's just magical.
There are so many magical moments that happen in that pavilion in particular. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's the feeling that you've been transported somewhere completely new.
Yeah.
But like, I think to my memories that I have in that pavilion of like, I have even just like very vivid memories of like inconsequential moments with my grandmother who passed away and like riding the Grand Fiesta Tour and there was like no line and we would get back in and we would tell the cast member like go again and we just ride it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And like I think of your experience of the bachelorette trip with
crying on the fountain.
Sitting at that fountain crying. Like I don't know what it is, but there's something about that area that really just lends itself to Disney magic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
More so than I felt in other pavilions. Maybe it's because we're all happy because we're in air conditioning. That might be it.
And it could be the outside, inside, nighttime, air conditioning, but it's all of
like,
that.
Honestly, if I wanted to just shorten all of this down and be like, the reason why the Mexico Pavilion is the best, I would just say outside, inside. That's all I would say.
I was waiting for you to say that.
Outside, inside. Need I say more? Outside, inside.
God. Wow, just so much of what you were saying just is in such a stark contrast to Morocco, and like
it was kind of painful for me to say this after your rant,
honestly,
to be honest,
like it's just so sad
because I'm like Mexico is the best because they've kept it authentic, and I'm like, well, I feel like Morocco didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, no,
it feels almost like Morocco was kind of violated.
I completely agree because like all of the things that you were talking about, the care that the Mexico Pavilion was made with, like same with Morocco. Like we were on the right track for success.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh my God, should Morocco just like copy what is going well in Mexico? Should we do outside inside? Should we do like we need air conditioning? What else? Like, because it's like, okay, then it brought me back to like thinking about the great point that you were making about like how the IP just like elevates and the culture. And that's impossible in the Morocco Pavilion.
It's impossible with Morocco.
So I was like, okay,
which means that we have to do something that is so intrinsically Morocco and captivating that people have to go see it regardless of an IP.
Yes.
Or maybe we even create a fucking original character.
Right. Let's do that. Now I'm like, if they're going to force the Aladdin thing, the only thing I don't need it, but if we're going to force IP into there, it's got to be Aladdin and Jasmine have to be learning about the culture along with us. Like they're flying around the world on their carpet and they landed in Morocco.
Yes, exactly.
Like not that this has anything to do with them, but they are world travelers and they have decided to stop in Morocco, you know?
Exactly.
Oh, Mexico. I love it. I love it.
I love it too. But it's sort of like the Mexico Pavilion took all of the elements that we love so much. So it's like it took like the Blue Bayou vibe of Pirates of the Caribbean with the lagoon, the boat, the insides. It's just like took all of these things where it's like, let's take a little bit of everything that's working and put it all together. Yeah. And it works. And it worked so well. Like sitting at the San Angel Inn restaurant.
It's elite.
Up against it's Because people are on the other side of that gate watching you, and people in their boats are watching you, and you're like, oh, excuse me, I'm dining by candlelight right now. These are my fish tacos. Like, it's
the
just
best. It's the best.
You're dining next to this like Mayan pyramid and a fucking indoor lagoon.
That's what I'm saying. Like, more restaurants on bodies of water. There can never be enough.
Never enough.
Never.
Alrighty, well, that's going to do it for us for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way all of our episodes download to your device and you don't miss out on anything. And then this is the moment. If you liked this episode, which I really hope that you do because we put a lot of work into it, please hit 5 stars and leave a written review. And then also hit that little share button wherever you're listening. And send it to a friend, someone who, you know, you've been telling over and over to like listen to this podcast, like force it on them. They'll appreciate it. They will. I guarantee it. Or your money back.
Please also follow us on social media. We are at Poor Unfortunate Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. We will definitely be sharing images and footage of these beautiful pavilions. We also want to see your photos. So if you have some like old family vacation photos or footage from these pavilions, especially if it's like kind of from back in the day, we would love to see them. Send them to us. If it's okay with you, we will feature them and just like talk about some of our incredible memories that we've had there. Social media also played a big part in our previous episode, which was mind games. And
you want to tell the results? I know I got freaking demolished. I think it was
No.
rigged.
You actually did not get demolished. You didn't, because it was the first 2 categories.
I didn't win a single in the beverage category.
That was great. That was crazy.
I was shocked.
That was crazy. I can never predict what y'all are going to say and think. It's very interesting.
I want to know how many people voting in that thing actually listened to the damn episode.
So yes, I pulled ahead because of those first 2 categories, but like then you were bashing me like towards the end. So it was a great fight. I came out a little bit ahead. I won.
I know, of course you did. You
I won.
fucking demolished it. I think it was rigged.
Of course you do.
All of those people
all this to say,
teamed up against me.
Yeah, that's right.
Independently, they teamed up against me.
So all of this to say, social media is a very important aspect of the experience of Poor Unfortunate Podcast. So please follow us and interact with us and just like be a part of it that way. And if you want even more Poor Unfortunate Podcast in your life, if you want to talk about any like family stories you might have in these pavilions, Epcot memories, please join our private Facebook group, the Poor Unfortunate Fam. It's our private Facebook group for listeners. We've got over 100 members in there. It's a great place to talk about the episodes, talk about your recent Disney trips, and just a great way for Conor and I to connect with all of you and to hear more about what you enjoy the most about the podcast so we can do more and more and more of it. So please join us there. You do not have to be a big Facebook person. I literally only go on Facebook to see what's happening in the fam, and you can do that too. So we would love to meet you.
And if you're looking for merch, go to the Poor Unfortunate shop. It is open, poorunfortunatepodcast.com/shop. You can get all the merchandise that you're looking for. And then, as I always say, it does take us a little bit of money to keep the podcast up and running and coming to you. We do have a PayPal account. It is linked in our episode description and on the website links in our social media accounts. Truly anything that you have to spare, it really goes a long way for us. It could be a one-time donation, a monthly donation, $5, $10, more than that. It all just goes right back into the podcast, helping us keep it free and ad-free for the most part. And to all of our monthly donors, thank you so much for your help. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. We wouldn't be able to like sit here and do like 8-page research papers for you without it. Alrighty. Well, that's it for this episode. Until next time, Beluga Savruga.